Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Lost His Power and Had to Start Over movie. Before we start, please go support UzumakiHirashin for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Naruto fights Mizuki a year before the other kids of his generation. In that fight, he awakens a power that no one has awakened for a long time. What will happen to Naruto after that fight? Chapter 1, Power and Proposal. In the village of Konoha, the most powerful ninja village of the 5 great nations, there was a great uproar because the scroll of the village's forbidden techniques had been stolen by a mere student of the ninja academy. And he wasn't just any student. According to the academy records, he was one of the worst students of his generation. His name was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox that attacked the village 11 years ago and took the lives of many shinobi and its leader, the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, who sacrificed his life to kill the fox, or at least that was the story that appeared in the village records. Hokage-sama, it's impossible that he bypassed the guard without help. He's just a student, and according to reports, he's one of the worst students of his generation, along with that Nara kid, says an ANBU captain standing beside him. I think the same. I managed to get past the ANBU guard without much trouble. Who were the guards? The old Hokage asked. The guards were newly recruited members of the Anbu Corps. They have already been arrested and are currently being interrogated by Ibukai-senpai. When you find him, I don't want you to harm him. If you can reason with him, do so. If necessary, knock him unconscious. I don't want you to hurt him, Sarutobi said in a commanding tone to his subordinate. Yes, Hokage-sama, my men have already gone to his apartment, the academy, and the restaurant he always frequents, but they didn't find him, the ANBU said. I hope this is just a mistake, the old leader of the Leaf thought. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the village, a blonde boy leaps from tree to tree as fast as his feet will carry him. His success depended on receiving his ninja headband, which would officially recognize him as a genin of the Leaf village a year ahead of his peers. This meant he was one step closer to realizing his dream. According to Mizuki-sensei, the test involved taking the scroll of techniques from the Hokage Tower and learning one of the techniques contained within, but why not copy some of the more interesting ones? After all, it's not every day you get an opportunity like this. These seem like good jutsus. Kage Shuriken no Jutsu, Reiko Kenka, Jibaku Bunshin, Gyoudaru no Jutsu, Haijutsu Sensatsu Suishu, Katen Hausenka. He thinks while he copies the jutsus and keeps them in his clothes to go meet Mizuki. Mizuki-sensei is supposed to be here by now, Naruto said to himself after practicing one of the techniques he found on the scroll for a while. I finally found you, you little idiot, the Chunin said nervously and irritably. What's wrong, sensei? I've done everything I could, Naruto interrupted, delivering a powerful kick to the face that sent him crashing into a tree. Stupid, the whole proof of the scroll thing was a lie. There's no such proof. I asked you to bring it to me so I wouldn't get implicated in the theft. Right now the Anbu are probably looking for you, hahaha, he says while laughing uncontrollably. But why, sensei? Why? Because that's what demons like you deserve, he says, spitting his venom at Naruto. Be quiet, Mizuki, that's against Hokage law. Interrupted a shadow, Uruka, it seems you've discovered me, it's a real shame, now I'll have to kill you too, I really liked you. Uruka-sensei, what's going on here? The blonde boy asked desperately. Listen carefully, Naruto, run and don't stop. Mizuki tricked you, don't let Mizuki get the scroll under any circumstances, I stopped him. Who are you going to stop, Uruka? Hahaha, Mizuki laughs as he plunges a kunai into his old childhood friend's stomach and kicks him several meters away. Irukasnsi? Why the hell did you do that, Mizuki? Where did the respect you owe your sensei go? Hahaha. Why did you do that? Naruto asked again. I'll tell you why I'm doing this. It's because you're a demon. Inside you is the Kyuubi. That's why the people of this town hate you. Don't tell me you haven't noticed the looks from the civilians and even some ninjas. They blame you for the deaths of their loved ones. Shut up, Mizuki, don't continue with this, you won't get away with it, Naruto. Don't listen to everything Mizuki tells you, said the very hurt Uruka. So that's why people look at me like that, with hatred, contempt, those looks that wish only the worst for me. That's the reason, Naruto thinks as he disconnects from the outside world to immerse himself in his thoughts. Mizuki, stop this now. I'm tired of this. First I'll eliminate you, and then I'll go after the demon, he says as he draws a katana and runs towards Uruka, noticing that the atmosphere feels like his body is experiencing small electrical discharges. When the blade of the katana is about to cut the neck of the defenseless Uruka, he feels a great pain and a terrible heat that pierces him before he falls into the eternal sleep of death. He realizes that Naruto is enveloped in an orange cloak, and around him there is electricity. How could that little boy control such a difficult element? Anbu Captain Kaido Furukawa had just returned from his mission in the Land of Grass to report that it was a complete success. Those rogue jonin weren't much of a problem for him and his men. After all, his team was made up of young but highly skilled individuals. He himself was 25 years old, having become a jonin at 13. The bad news was that on the day of his Jonin promotion, the nine-tailed fox Kurama attacked the village. As a Jonin, he had to be on the front lines, which was more of a massacre than a battle. The Leaf Village's inhabitants were falling like flies from Jonin to Anbu. But everything changed when the fourth Hokage arrived and managed to stop the fox, though at the cost of his own life. From that moment on, the fourth Hokage became his greatest inspiration, and what he was being told at that moment infuriated him. The fourth Hokage's son had stolen one of the village's scrolls of techniques and was currently on the run. He himself would teach that child, whom he once protected from the attacks of the villagers and some ninjas, that betraying the village that his father protected with his life would cost him his own. This is Captain Torai 3298N speaking. I've found a fresh trail leading to the outskirts of the village. I'll follow it. Judging by the size of the footprints, I presume they belong to a male no older than 11, which matches the subject I'm tracking. Control acknowledged. Proceed with caution, Captain. If you find the subject, do not harm him. I repeat, do not harm him. These are orders from Hokage-sama. Control understood, he says through his communicator, which is integrated into his Anbu tiger mask. These footprints aren't the boys, there are a couple more. I'll follow them. It seems he's not alone in this, the Anbu captain thinks as he quickly follows the trail of footprints. Kaido Furukawa stood speechless, unable to believe his eyes. The son of the fourth Hokage was enveloped in an orange cloak, and all around him crackled with tiny sparks of electricity. The air was sweltering, at least 33 degrees Celsius. A Chunin's body had a gaping hole in his stomach, and judging by the wound, it appeared something extremely hot had passed through it. Upon closer inspection, the Chunin holding the hole was wielding a katana. Just centimeters away lay another Chunin, unconscious and with a visible wound in his stomach. He had to react quickly, so he threw 3 chakra restriction seals at Naruto. The moment they touched him, the seals melted and shattered instantly, surprising the Anbu captain, who had no choice but to strike Naruto on the back of the neck, rendering him unconscious. Torai 3298N reporting to Control, the target has been located and temporarily disabled. Send a medical team and someone from the Research and Development Department, coordinates 34 of Sector 9. Control acknowledged, Captain. The requested units are en route. All right, and one more thing, tell Sandaime-sama to come, he'll want to see this. After witnessing the destruction and ease with which the Nine Tails slaughtered the Leaf Village shinobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi was rarely surprised by anything. But this time was different. He watched as the Anbu Research and Development team examined Mizuki's large wound. Not only that, but within a radius of at least 10 meters, the air was incredibly hot, so much so that everyone felt as if they were in a desert, not a forest. And it seemed that the one responsible for all this was none other than Naruto. At that very moment, Uruka was being taken to the hospital along with Naruto, while the Anbu Research and Development team informed him that Mizuki's wound was supposedly caused by a lightning bolt that had pierced him at extremely high speeds and temperatures, passing through as if it were butter. In other words, this lightning bolt was extraordinary. Furthermore, the rapid investigation indicated that Naruto had been tricked by Mizuki into stealing the scroll. Uruka must have realized this and followed them. When he tried to stop Mizuki, he was wounded, awakening a power within Naruto, perhaps a Kekkei Genkai, but the Namikaze clan didn't possess such a power. Perhaps the Uzumaki clan did, but Kushina never demonstrated this ability. Maybe some information existed in Minato and Kushina's old house. But knowing them, important documents would be protected by blood seals, so the only one who could access that information was Naruto. 2 days had passed since the Sarutobi scroll incident. He had already confirmed his theory with Uruka about what happened to the scroll of techniques. While they were discussing the incident, they heard someone knocking at the door. Hokage-sama, may I speak with you for a moment? Asks the same Anbu with a dragon mask who found Naruto and Uruka. What is it you want to talk about? From the Omega program and Naruto-kun, says the ANBU. All right, tell me what you think, the Hokage said, intrigued. But the ANBU said hesitantly. Don't worry, Uruka is someone I trust completely. I propose Naruto-kun to enter the Omega program. His abilities are very impressive, and he would be a great addition to the program, not to mention that it would also help Naruto-kun a lot. I had already thought about that, but the decision is entirely his. And besides, you would have to explain everything involved in entering the program. But even if he accepts, he is far below the level of those already in the program. It would be the same or worse than at the academy, the third Hokage commented. That's why I'm asking you to give me a year to train him so he can reach the level of Sandaime-sama. And what will happen to your team and your missions? Sarutobi asked. My team can manage, and besides, you recently suggested I take a break. The last time I took a long break was over 4 years ago. You're right, but I was suggesting a break of a couple of months, 3 at most. When you require me for a mission, I would leave Naruto practicing a high-level jutsu while I return. I'm from the assassination division. We don't usually take long on missions, Sandai-sama. Alright Kaido-kun, you have my permission to train him, of course, if he wants to. Yes, Hokage-sama, I'll make you the offer when you wake up, he says as he disappears in a puff of smoke. Uruka had been listening to the entire conversation he had with that Anbu. Many questions were swirling in his mind. Hokage-sama, what is Team Omega Omega? A confused Uruka asked. Chapter 2, Accepting. Kage-sama, what is Team Omega Omega? A confused Uruka asked. The Omega Omega group is a subdivision of ANBU that was created several years ago with kids who had abilities beyond the norm, geniuses in certain things, with abilities like the one Naruto demonstrated. In fact, you know the most powerful former member who came from the ranks of Omega Omega, the third Hokage replied to Uruka's question. Could it be Hate Kakashi? Or am I mistaken, Hokage-sama? You're mistaken. The one I'm referring to is none other than Itachi Uchiha. In fact, when the Uchiha massacre occurred, he was about to be appointed leader of Omega. The few Uchiha who survived the massacre did so because members of Omega managed to repel Itachi and force him to flee. That's why he didn't kill all the Uchiha. I understand, Hokage-sama, but even if Naruto has that extraordinary ability, it won't do him any good. He doesn't know the basic fundamentals of ninjutsu. Kaido-kun kindly offered to train him. He is an Anbu and one of the most outstanding members of Omega Omega. That's what I mean. Why would an elite Anbu like him take a whole year to train him personally? It's not that I don't trust Naruto, I know he can do it, I know he's capable of many incredible things. But I've seen civilians and even ninjas of all ranks looking at him like they want to kill him. And you're worried that Kaido-kun is one of them and is only using training as a pretext to eliminate him, right? Yes, that's exactly what I thought, Uruka replied, admitting his concern. If Kaido-kun wanted to harm Naruto, he would have done so years ago. He was his guardian for almost a year and prevented harm to him on several occasions. He disabled the civilians who attacked him and they were expelled from the village, while his orders were to kill the ninjas who tried to attack him, and that's what he did. After what I just told you, do you still doubt his intentions? Besides, I would never expose Naruto like that without being sure that his guardian would take good care of him. I'm very sorry for having doubted your judgment, Hokage-sama, said a very apologetic Uruka. Don't worry, Uruka, that just shows you genuinely care about Naruto. I hope he finds more people like you along the way because his life won't be easy. Naruto opened his eyes heavily. From the mere smell of the place, he could guess that he was in the hospital. When he opened them fully, he realized something. There was an ANBU sitting in a chair next to his bed. That meant one thing, they were blaming him for the role of techniques. Ambusen, I can explain. Mizuki told me that if I know, and Sandai-sama, you don't need to worry, Naruto-kun, the ANBU said calmly. What happened to Uroke-sensei? Naruto asked, very worried. He's fine. He woke up a couple of hours before you. He wanted to come see you, but he was too weak to get up, and Hokage-sama left a few minutes ago. He had matters to attend to. But he sends his regards and will come to your apartment later. Phew, that's great news. Well, I have to get going so I can go to the academy tomorrow, Naruto said as he took off his lab coat and grabbed his clothes to leave. Aren't you going to ask what happened to Mizuki? If Uroke-sensei and I are alive, it's obvious they stopped him in time. That's why I didn't ask about him. With your permission, Ambusen, he says as he opens the door to the room to leave. Or maybe you didn't ask me what happened to him because you already know, but don't worry, what you did is truly impressive. You took down a Chunin without even leaving the academy. It seems you have the Nenten element, he said, while Naruto was surprised that he knew something about what he had done that even he couldn't explain. From what I've researched, it's an extremely rare ability. I heard something about this ability in Uzu, but only rumors. I'd never seen it myself since that city was wiped out a long time ago. I don't think it's a very useful ability if I don't know how to activate it, and if it's so rare, there aren't many people who can teach me, said Naruto, still surprised that he possessed such a rare ability. Mizuki had a very sharp tongue. He told you something that was an S-rank secret, and what I'm about to tell you is also an S-rank secret. As she said this, she performed several seals to block out the sound in the room, preventing anyone from hearing what she was about to propose to the blonde boy. Tell me, Naruto-kun, what is your biggest dream in this life? My biggest dream is for people to stop looking at me like I'm the Kyuubi, to be respected for what I can become and not for what they think I am, to one day become a valuable member of the village and maybe even become Hokage, he says as he returns to his bed to sit down and listen to what the Anbu has to say. Your dreams are good, but they are just that dreams. But with what I'm going to propose, if you put in the effort, you can achieve your dreams and make them come true. I'm listening, Ambusen, says an interested blue-eyed man. There's a program called Omega Omega. This program was created to gather ninjas with extraordinary abilities and give them the proper training to develop their skills to the fullest, so they can serve the village in the future. You're a completely autonomous branch of ANBU. Omega Omega is the elite of the elite, the Hokage's right hand. We act strictly under his orders, just like the ANBU. There's no fixed age for recruitment, but they commonly join at 8 or 10 years old at the most, which is when they usually show their abilities. I propose that you join us and develop your skills, but before you join Omega Omega, I will train you for a year. As for your ability, that's something I'll discuss with the third Hokage. Would you train me for a year? I'm that far behind everyone else, aren't I? Several of them have been training for years to become members of Omega Omega, so it's normal that you're not at their level yet. But before you give me an answer, I'll tell you what will change in your life. Training will begin first thing in the morning and end at 6 p.m. 6 days a week. You can use the 7th day as you see fit, and this will continue for a year. When you return from your training, I guarantee you'll be exhausted, but you'll get used to it over time. And when that starts to happen, the intensity of your training will increase. So that means I'll be leaving the academy, but what will you argue with the old man about? Naruto asked. If you were to leave the academy, but you would graduate the same year as your academy classmates, you would have the rank of ANBU. And even when you join the Omega Omega aspirants, you would already have the ability to participate in rank-by-rank missions, and obviously you would be their superior. After completing training with the aspirants, you would begin to carry out missions alone or in teams as the situation required. You and your teammates would serve as support for the different divisions. The Tracking Division, the Assassination Division, the Interrogation and Torture Division led by Ibiki Morino, the Konoha Internal Security Division, the ANBU Research and Development Division, and the Intelligence Division, which is not led by an ANBU member but by a Jounin from the Nara clan. He answered their first question and evaded the second. I accept everything that joining Omega Omega entails. I will do my best to better serve my village, she replied with determination and confidence, realizing that the ANBU had not answered her second question. I'm glad to hear that. In 5 days, I'll be at your apartment door first thing in the morning to take you to where we'll train. Remember, what I've told you is an S-rank secret. Oh, and by the way, eat a proper breakfast. Don't just eat instant ramen, you'll be lacking nutrients. So I took the liberty of stocking your pantry with more than just ramen. Oh, and also buy yourself some clothes, because if you show up in that orange jumpsuit, I'll be so embarrassed to train you, hahaha, he said, then disappeared in a puff of smoke. Bayoro Aka, he says that because he has no sense of fashion, she says, leaving the hospital room and heading to her apartment and maybe later to buy some clothes. Damn, I didn't ask her name, Naruto said to himself. Sarutobi was in a great dilemma, as it depended on him whether Naruto would learn about his past now or when he had planned when Naruto became a chunin. He thought it would be at 14 or 15 years old, but at this age he was only 10 and things weren't as simple as saying, your father was the 4th Hokage and sealed the 9 tails inside you, and not only that, your mother was the heir of the Uzumaki clan, better known in the Anbu forces as the Scarlet Demon. But wait, that's not all. Your mother was also the 9 tails Jinchuriki. But despite that, he knew that the only way Naruto could use his Kekkei Genkai was to search the documents of Minato and Kushina's old house. It was the only place he could find anything about the element. He just hoped Naruto would understand, and even if he didn't, he couldn't blame him for not understanding. Knock, knock, knock. Hokage-sama and Anbu wishes to see you. She identifies herself as Torai 3298N, says a woman with black hair and dark blue eyes around 30 years old wearing a light military green vest that identifies her as a chunin. Tell Yuichin to come in and don't let anyone interrupt us, he tells his secretary. Yes, I'll let the council members know the meeting has been postponed. Don't bother, don't tell them anything, let them keep waiting, hahaha, replies a very amused Sarutobi. Okay, he says with a small smile, imagining the old folks waiting as he lets Kaido pass. Sande Masama, I need to speak with you about Naruto-kun and the secret of his origins. I knew you'd come for that, but come on, stop being so formal and take off the mask. You're not on a mission, take a seat, he says in a relaxed manner. Understood, Sande Masama, Kaido replied as he removed his mask and cloak, revealing a young man's face with green eyes and dark brown hair. He had a tattoo on his left arm, but not a typical ANBU tattoo. Instead, it bore the symbol Omega Omega, identifying him as a member of that organization. Well, Kaido-kun, tell me, what do you think is right? The only way for Naruto-kun to progress in Nenten is if his past is revealed to him. Since being a Kekkei Genkai, there must be records of jutsu and ways to teach it in the personal library of Minato-sama and Uzumaki-sama. I can instruct him in other abilities such as chakra control, taijutsu, lightning and fire jutsu, assassination and espionage techniques, and even wind jutsu. But it is impossible for me to instruct him in something I know nothing about like Nenten. Then it's decided. Tonight I'll go to Naruto's apartment to reveal his origins and restore his parents' assets to his name. And whenever he wants, he can take a position on the village's clan council. But tell me honestly, what level do you think he'll be able to reach in a year, considering how far behind he is in his basic ninjutsu training? Well, I've reviewed your progress report at the academy, and according to it, you're a complete disaster in everything related to the art of being a ninja. Your taijutsu is practically non-existent, your basic jutsus are a mess, you have little agility when running, and your handling of short, medium, and long-range weapons is far below average. That's much worse than I thought, says a worried Sarutobi. But those reports are far from reality. From what I've seen in practice, he has a speed that a chunin would envy. I noticed this while watching him play pranks. It took 3 or 4 chunin to capture him, and even they with the ability to use chakra to increase their speed ended up exhausted. His ability to formulate plans in the heat of the moment is quite good. His taijutsu is disorganized but effective in combat against at least a high-level genin. I don't know his weapons handling skills, but that can be improved with practice and dedication. As for his jutsu, I have a theory as to why he can't perform basic techniques, and that's something I'll test on the first day of his training. But his chakra capacity is that of a high-level jonin. I think he could reach a high chunin level after finishing his training with me, and by joining the other aspirants, he'll gain battle experience and enrich his range of jutsu. He'll also refine his weapons handling and ninja equipment. In my opinion, he could face a jonin without much trouble. He finished his Omega training at only 12 years old or well, those are my most realistic estimates, of course, without counting what he can develop on his own with Nenten. I see you expect great things from him, but what method will you use to train him? I've been thinking that with a chakra reserve of this size, the training would involve using shadow clones to increase the learning speed, depending on how many I can make without collapsing from exhaustion after making them disappear. I think your way of thinking is correct, so rest these 5 days and then start with Naruto's training. I'll go talk to him tonight, I hope it goes well. Then with your permission, Sandema-sama, I will take my leave, he said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Chapter 3, Change of Style. Naruto had been wandering aimlessly after leaving the hospital, thinking about the radical changes his life would undergo with the training he was about to receive. Not only that, he also thought about the thing inside him. Even though he understood that the 4th Hokage had sealed that damn demon inside him for a good reason, he wondered, why on earth did he have to put it inside HIM? Did he never consider that he was condemning him to a life of loneliness and sadness? People looked at him with resentment, but most shinobi treated him like any other person. And of course there were exceptions in both cases, as evidenced by Ayame and her father Tuchai. In the case of the ninjas, he had the misfortune that the first years of his training were with teachers who looked at him the same way many villagers did, ignoring or punishing him. At first it was for no reason, but later he decided to give them a reason with his now legendary pranks. As for friends, the closest thing he had to friends were Shikamaru and Chaoji, although to be honest, sometimes he felt they only spoke to him out of politeness. But that was better than nothing. At least they never insulted or looked down on him like most of the class did, and that included Sakura and of course the conceited Sasuke. But the best thing was to stop thinking about that and concentrate on buying some equipment for his training, especially suitable clothing. Ramen was cheap, so his savings were quite respectable, and adding the amount the 3rd Hokage gave him from time to time, he would surely be able to buy something of good quality. But his thoughts were quickly interrupted when he bumped into someone, causing both of them to fall heavily to the ground. Ouch! That hurt, sorry I wasn't looking where I was walking, Naruto said, rubbing his head, still not looking at the person he bumped into. No, don't worry, it was my fault, replies a blue-haired girl with white eyes as she looks up and realizes that she was in front of the blonde boy she admired so much, instantly turning an intense red. Are you? I know you, but I can't remember your name, sorry I remember now, Haruki. Naruto asked, despite knowing her and her being his classmate, and if he remembered correctly they had been classmates for several years, but he had never exchanged more than 2 words with the blue-haired girl. My name is Hinata Hyuga, she says with her head down, both from the shame of having him so close and from the sadness that, despite having been classmates for a long time, she didn't even remember his name. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he says as he gets up, then helps Hinata to her feet as well. Yeah, I already knew that we're classmates. Well, Hinata-san, I'm leaving. I have some business to attend to and things to buy, he says as he turns his back to continue on his way to the ninja equipment and weapons shop. When will you return to the academy? You haven't shown up in the last 2 days, neither you nor Uroke-sensei, Hyuga asked, summoning all the courage she could to avoid fainting while Naruto stopped dead in his tracks, surprised by Hyuga's question. I've been sick. The other day I drank spoiled milk and it made me ill. And Uroke-sensei, well, I don't know, maybe he was sent on a mission, but I assure you he'll be back to teaching soon, Naruto replied as he picked up his pace, leaving behind the Hyuga girl who had a sad and confused look on her face. I must really be annoying to him, he ran away from me, Hinata thinks sadly. I hadn't thought about anyone wondering where the heck I am, but apparently that person does exist, it's a shame. I would have liked to get to know her a little better, Naruto thinks as he resumes his walk to the store. Standing in front of the store, Naruto realized this was the first time he'd ever bought anything other than ramen and clothes at the discount store. Those were among the few places where he didn't encounter disapproving looks simply for being there. With Tuchai, it was because of the respect they'd shown him almost from the moment he stepped into the ramen stand, and at the discount store all they cared about was getting paid. But now he was entering a place he'd never been before, and worse, they had weapons at hand ready to attack him, but he was a man, right? A small challenge wasn't going to stop him. His will burned as brightly as 1,000 suns, he thought, recalling a phrase he'd heard from a rather odd jounin a few weeks prior. Good morning. Sir, what can I offer you? We have shurikens, kunai, katanas, explosive tags, smoke bombs, whatever you want, and if we don't have it we can get it, or, failing that, manufacture it, and everything is of high quality, says a man of approximately 40 years old, perhaps a little older, with black hair already showing some traces of gray, with an X-shaped scar on his forehead. Well, what I want is I hadn't thought about that. Realizing that she never asked that Anbu what kind of equipment he needed for training. Well, I suppose you're at the academy, right? The man with the scar asked, realizing that his young customer had no idea what to buy. Something like that, Naruto replies. What you'll need are kunai, shuriken, ninja sandals, and I think a tanto knife or dagger would be good. A bit of thread would be very useful, he says calmly. I want a box of shurikens, 2 boxes of kunai, I'll leave the tanto for another day, and for the threads I want 2 rolls. Okay, that would be 1,500 ryus, but to make you come back and be a customer for life here at Suranami Weapons and Associates, I'll give you a 50 ryus discount, hehe, the man says, laughing. Associates? Naruto asks, a bead of sweat forming on his forehead. Well, it's fine, I don't have any associates, I just named it that because I thought it would sound really cool and attract customers, not to mention the big sign with letters that light up at night, the man says with great emotion and a cascade of tears in his eyes. How nice. But hey, I need more suitable clothes for my training, the blonde guy commented, trying to change the subject from the sign, which I honestly didn't notice. You'll need 3 types of clothing, for training, for missions, and for when you're off duty, any particular colors. You can choose between black, gray, dark blue, or military green, he says, regaining his composure. I like all those colors, but the clothes I need quickly would be training gear. I don't think I'll be going on missions for a while. Let me see, I had something here, wait a moment, says the man with the scar as he goes through the door on the other side of the counter. Okay, I'll wait, sir. Euro Surinami, and your name is Naruto, right? I found him, how do you know? Asks an intrigued Naruto. You're legendary for your jokes, it's hard not to know you, hehe, this is what I have, he says while showing him some black jeans, a long-sleeved blue shirt with half-white stripes on the sides, and a black jacket with a hood with an orange lining. Wow, awesome, I love it, I want several of those outfits, the boy said excitedly upon seeing the clothes he would wear for his training. At the moment I only have 4 suits of this type, but in 5 days I will have 6 more outfits for you. However, I will need to take your measurements to make the suits, and I will quickly alter the ones I already have to fit you. In a span of 2 hours, I arranged the 4 uniforms so that they would fit Naruto perfectly. Very well, that's all. Don't forget to come back in 5 days for what you missed, Yuro says cheerfully. See you later, Urasan, he said, then left the shop. The boy is nothing like what they say about him in the Merchants Guild, and this Danzo guy seems like a good boy and is quite nice, he tells himself. Meanwhile, from the other street, the situation that had just occurred was being watched by a pair of white eyes belonging to a short-haired, blue-haired girl. Why would Naruto-kun buy those things? Maybe he's planning to run away from the village, though I wouldn't blame him for it. After all, the villagers treat him like a nuisance. I think I should do the same, I'm just an embarrassment to Otosan, Hinata thought sadly, considering that the boy who inspired her to strive to be stronger every day might leave the village. Hinata-sama, what are you doing here? Asks a man who, judging by his features, was also a Hyuga but from the secondary branch. I was just taking a walk before training with Otosan and Hanabi, he replies quickly, hoping to convince the branch member. All right, Hinata-sama, but remember that Hayashi-sama will be angry if you arrive late. Let me escort you to the main mansion. Yes, let's go, Hyuga replied, discouraged and fearful that Naruto would leave the village. Oh. After dropping off his afternoon shopping, Naruto realized someone had entered his apartment. It was obvious it was that Anbu, since his pantry was full of canned food, and the refrigerator drawers were overflowing with fruits, vegetables, and even pre-cooked meat that just needed to be heated. On the table where he ate were bottles of vitamins along with a note containing precise instructions on how to take them and what each one was for. The note ended with, P.S. I took all the ramen you had, you won't need it anymore, and clean that place up. I've seen better hygiene in a stable. My ramen isn't fair, she says, tears welling in her eyes. Oh. Meanwhile, in the Hawkage Tower, Hiruzen Sarutobi was looking out the window of his office at the faces of his predecessors and, of course, his successor. Well, the moment has arrived, Tenzo. The Hawkage called to an Anbu who was hidden. Yes. I'm listening to orders, Sende-masama, says an Anbu, bowing respectfully in front of the Hawkage. I want you to follow me to the place I'm going now. I don't want you to be seen, so be careful. And another thing, whatever happens, don't interfere unless I order you to, the old third Hawkage ordered. Understood, says the Anbu, then disappears and becomes his shadow. Sarutobi was walking slower than usual, trying to delay the inevitable encounter with Naruto as much as possible. He looked around, seeing that most people were already closing their businesses. He stopped from time to chat with some villagers and shinobi in his futile attempt to avoid facing Naruto, but no matter how much he wanted to delay their meeting, at this moment he was already in front of the boy's door. He hoped he was doing the right thing. Knock, knock, knock. I'm coming, shouts a sleepy blonde man from the other side of the door. Hello Naruto, says the Hokage. Grandpa, do you know what time it is? Seriously, I don't have a watch, she said, showing him her bare wrist and then started laughing. That's good, Naruto, the Hokage says in a forced manner. It would break his heart if I told him that he has as much comedic talent as I have in youth. Seriously, old man, what do you want? It's night and tomorrow I'm going to practice the techniques I copied from the role, me and my big mouth, he says, realizing that he had revealed his little secret. And may I ask which ones you copied? The Hokage said animatedly. Aren't you upset? Naruto asked fearfully. Of course not, and besides, now that you're entering Omega, you'll need many high-level jutsus. I have an idea. Change your clothes and show me the jutsus you've learned so I can supervise you. Oh really? Yes, but hurry. Before he could finish the sentence, Naruto was already in his orange jumpsuit ready to go out and train. After all, it's not every day that the Hokage offers to personally supervise your training. I'm ready, he says, standing in front of the third Hokage. I'll take you to training ground 1, specially made for the Hokages to train in. Every one of the 4 Hokages from Hashirama Senju to Minato Namikaze has trained there. What's so special about that field, Ajisen? Well, that field is surrounded by 4 pillars that have the ability to absorb or contain a large amount of chakra, which makes it so that no one notices that the current Hokage is developing new jutsus or practicing at a high level, since if the chakra he is using were to escape, it would attract the attention of the entire village. These pillars were developed by a clan from the now non-existent Uzu no Kuni of the Land of Whirlpools. Well then, I'll train where only Hokages have done. That would be a great honor for me, Hokage-sama, he says, bowing in front of him in respect. Come on, follow me, says Sarutobi. Chapter 4, Secrets Revealed. After a couple of minutes of walking and passing through the village exit, they arrived at a cave entrance. As they ventured deeper inside, they reached a large wall which dematerialized after the third Hokage performed a combination of seals. They entered what appeared to be an open field within the cave, and even the full moon was visible. They also saw the 4 pillars that Sarutobi had spoken of earlier. Each pillar was white, at least 10 meters high, and engraved with countless restriction and absorption seals. Undoubtedly, those who had created these pillars had put considerable effort into doing a good job. What is this place? Naruto asked, very surprised. This is the training ground I told you about. Well, now show me what you learned, Naruto. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he says, appearing as 4 copies of Naruto appear. Heh, what do you think of that, Grandpa? Say the 4 Kage Bunshin with a thumbs up, while the original Naruto is behind them sporting a big smile. Very impressive. And a couple of hours passed in which Naruto taught him the few jutsus he had managed to learn, such as the Kage Shuriken and the Kage Bunshin. Also, the third Hokage had created a Kage Bunshin that attacked the large number of clones that Naruto had created, 20 to be more precise. The clone that the third Hokage had made easily finished off his clones. It didn't even take 20 seconds to finish them off. Grandpa, what is it you want to tell me? Naruto gasped, exhausted from trying to attack the Hokage. What are you talking about? The third Hokage feigned ignorance. He really didn't want to do this, at least not now. It was too soon. I'm not as stupid as everyone thinks. Deep down, I already knew about the Kyuubi. After all, the villagers have given me many clues all these years. They've called me Foxboy, Demon, Murderer. What Mizuki did only confirmed my suspicions. And I also know that's not everything, but unfortunately I'm not able to read minds, so tell me what you have to say. First of all, I'll tell you that your parents loved you more than you can imagine. They were eagerly awaiting your arrival, full of excitement. Your father only talked about how you would grow up to become a great shinobi, and all your mother wanted was to hold you in her arms and watch you grow. If they loved me so much, why did they abandon me? She spits out resentfully. They didn't leave you of their own free will. They sacrificed themselves to save you and the village, Sarutobi said seriously. Did they die in the Kyuubi attack? Did he kill them? The blond man asked, tears welling in his eyes and clearly angry at his prisoner. Yes and no, your mother was the third Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. She came from the Land of Whirlpools. In fact, she was the heir of the Uzumaki clan from the now extinct Uzushiagakure no Sato, famous for their skill in seals and their large amount of chakra. Those were the characteristic traits of that clan and also their red hair color. But if my mother was from Uzu no Kuni, how did she get to Konoha? What happened to Uzushiagakure no Sato? In the last Great Ninja War, it was raised by the alliance of the villages of Aim, Rain, Kusa, Grass, and Taki, Waterfall, and some rumors say that Iwa also helped. We found out after it was all over, and Uzushiagakure no Sato was only ruins of what was once the most powerful village of all. Even though the Land of Whirlpools was just a small island, It took missions from the villages I mentioned before because its mission effectiveness rate was very high despite its small shinobi population, since those it had were of a very high level. The few survivors of the village came to Konoha for refuge, and some more scattered around the world and changed their surnames to avoid reprisals from their enemies. Among the survivors who came to Konoha was the clan heir, Kushina Uzumaki, daughter of the late Uzukage. They were given refuge in exchange for swearing loyalty to the Leaf Village and forgetting any past grievances. Aspiration to rebuild their village, also that your mother, when she was old enough, would marry the leader of some clan in the village to consolidate her loyalty to the Leaf, having no other option they accepted. So the Leaf took advantage of my family and my mother, Naruto said with a hint of anger in his voice. Kill them all. They only used your mother and they'll do the same to you. It was a time of war, the village had to strengthen itself somehow. The council saw an opportunity to do so with the Uzumaki. I'm very sorry, Naruto, I tried to prevent it, said a sad and ashamed Hokage. So who was my father? Who were you forced to marry? I can give you the power, just release me and I'll finish them all off in one blow. Your mother grew up to become a great shinobi, a leader of the Anbu. When the time came for the Uzumaki family to fulfill their agreement with the council, she flatly refused. They wanted her to marry the then future leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku Uchiha. She told him that if he managed to defeat her in battle, she would accept the marriage and the complete dissolution of her clan. The battle took place and Kushina managed to defeat Fugaku. We weren't surprised that she defeated him. What surprised us was the ease with which she did it. Even today, we're still trying to figure out how she did it, since after the battle, neither of them ever mentioned what happened that day again. Who was my father? Your father did what he had to do to protect the village. He loved you and your mother. He had no other choice. You have to forgive him, Sarutobi said in a tone that sounded very much like shame. You know who I am, brat. You and I both know you're not as stupid as you seem. I condemn you to the life you've had until now. You just have to remove the seal and your pain will disappear. I'll make it disappear. Tell me what your name was, Hokage-sama, he says in a tone full of resentment. His name was Minato Namikaze, or as most call him, Yondaime Hokage. The moment the Hokage finished saying the name, there was a powerful explosion of chakra. As the dust from the explosion dissipated, Sarutobi saw Naruto enveloped in red chakra with two visible tails. For a moment, he thought he was going to attack, but he realized that the blonde boy had his eyes closed and was apparently motionless. Naruto's mind. Where am I? He commented to himself, realizing that he was in a place that resembled a drain, and in front of him was a large gate, and behind it were enormous red eyes that reflected anger and murderous instinct. Come closer, child. You know who I am, right? If you let me go, I promise I will avenge your clan, your country, your village, and most importantly, I will avenge you. I will destroy this pathetic village. Of course I know who you are after all. Thanks to you, the whole village hates me, Naruto says firmly in front of the gate that keeps the Kitsune prisoner. Hahaha, you're still a pup, you have a lot to learn. What that old man told you isn't even a quarter of the real story. There's much more behind my attack on your rotten village and even more behind the last great ninja war where your clan disappeared. Someone has been working in the shadows. In a few years, perhaps they'll start moving their pieces, and when they do, the world will tremble. Don't try to confuse me. Do you think I'm going to believe you? Naruto shouts, I really don't care if you believe me or not. The only thing you know for sure is that your own father left you to your fate knowing the destiny that awaited you. Don't deny that it infuriates you, pup. That's it, he did it to defend the village. He and my mother didn't want to leave me alone, they had to. They died protecting the village and I'm not willing to dishonor their memory by destroying the leaf. So what are you supposed to do, pup? The fox asked sarcastically. I will honor the memory of my parents and my clan by becoming stronger and protecting the village, striving every day to surpass my limits and form bonds with many people, making them see the true me and not just you. I will rebuild my clan and become Hokage. I will never go back on my word because that is my ninja way. Ha, you impertinent puppy, you are different from the other hairless apes. Train hard because when I get out of here you will be the second one I kill. Good luck, old fox, because when you get out I'll send you back to your cage with one blow. Wait, will I be the second one you kill? Tell me who will be the first. He shouts, then realizes that he was no longer inside his mind. He was on the ground in the middle of a crater at least 5 meters deep. Is Naruto alright? What happened? Sarutobi asked, very concerned, as the boy had briefly released 2 of the Kyuubi's tails. I'm so sorry, Grandpa. For a moment I felt so much anger, Naruto murmured, his head bowed, trying to hide the tears that were coming out of his eyes. No, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to protect you or defend your rights all these years. I let myself be manipulated by the council, but I promise you this won't happen again. Your rights as a survivor of 2 clans, your inheritance, both monetary and land, will be given to you, and when you wish, you will take your place on the clan council, he whispers in her ear as a few treacherous tears escape his eyes. Talk to him? Who are you referring to, Naruto? The third Hokage asked, fearing the blonde's answer. With the ball of fur, the fox, he whispers. What did he say to you? Basically, he said that when I got out, I would be the second person he would kill. And he told me that there is more to his attack than meets the eye and that the world will tremble when someone in the shadows starts to act. Don't believe everything the fox tells you, remember he's a demon, but I'll take what he said into account just as a precaution. Okay, but I want to know about my family, my father's and my mother's, says the blonde man. I understand you want to know more about your family, but wait until tomorrow. I'll take you to your parents' house and perhaps your questions will be answered there since both clans you belong to disappeared and there's little information about them. In the meantime, let's return to the village. I'll be waiting for you in my office tomorrow at 8:00 p.m., Sarutobi replied cheerfully. Tomorrow my new life begins, and I promise that I will fight every day to become stronger and be able to protect the village that my parents protected with their lives. I will create new bonds with people. I will rebuild my clan and honor the memory of my ancestors and all those who believed in me. I promise that I will never give up. And so began a new chapter in the life of Naruto Uzumaki, or rather, Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki. Special: The beginnings of Uzu no Kuni. Uzu no Kuni was a village that began a decade before most of the current villages. Thanks to its small territory, the clans of the Land of Whirlpools were able to unite under the leadership of the Uzumaki clan, which was considered one of the strongest clans in the Theniscent ninja world thanks to its monstrous amount of chakra and its impressive skill in creating seals. The leader of the Uzumaki clan at that time was chosen as the leader of the nascent Uzu no Kuni, naming him Shadame Uzukage. The first few years after the official founding of Uzu no Kuni were difficult, as neighboring countries constantly attempted to attack it by hiring mercenaries or ninja organizations. Since there weren't many villages at that time, the reason for these attacks was that the old feudal lords feared that organized villages would challenge their power and overthrow them. They wanted Uzu no Kuni to be an example to all the shinobi of the ninja continent and show them that they lacked the financial and military power to defeat them. But despite all the obstacles, Uzu achieved the necessary stability to rise as one of the first ninja villages. Over time, it gained the favor of the Whirlpool feudal lord, thus becoming the first ninja nation. With the Whirlpool feudal lord's support, its progress was impressive. It established an organized ranking system to assign shinobi based on their abilities, and a comprehensive training program to develop the raw materials needed to supply missions, or as it is commonly known, Academy. Another of the great achievements attributed to Uzu no Kuni was the development of the first seal capable of containing a Byuji. This great feat was achieved by the Uzumaki clan, even though several emerging villages like Iwa were already developing their own Byuji containment seals, but they were not as effective as those created by the Uzumaki clan. As time passed, more ninja villages were founded all over the continent, each and every one of them with different levels, from very weak villages to high-level ones that in the coming years would become the elemental nations. Unfortunately, Uzu no Kuni fell in the last great ninja war, but that's another story. Chapter 5: The Inheritance. It was a rainy morning, and to be honest, a bit cold, which wasn't normal for that time of year, but it was fine since she would have hated a sunny day. Even though she had told the Hokage that she understood everything her parents had done, it didn't stop it from hurting to her very core. After all, she couldn't forget overnight so many years of loneliness, humiliation, and deprivation, both emotional and material. The apartment she was living in wasn't a bad place, but it still wasn't entirely to her liking, especially knowing that she had parents and that neither of them were ordinary ninjas. On the contrary, her father was the fourth Hokage, and her mother was the heir to an ancient clan like the Uzumaki. But now she would receive her parents' legacy. She would move from her apartment to the house where her family had lived. That was too many changes all at once. She would suddenly receive several things that had been denied her since birth. After lying in bed for a few more minutes thinking, he decided to get up and start his day. Looking at the clock, he realized it was only 6:00 in the morning. He couldn't remember the last time he had gotten up so early. After taking a hot shower to relax his muscles, which were still sore from the short training session with the Hokage, he put on his new training outfit and decided to have a light breakfast consisting of cereal with milk, juice, and of course, the vitamins his new sensei had told him to take to properly nourish his body and at least partially compensate for the slight malnutrition he had suffered from his diet of instant ramen. After finishing breakfast and washing the dishes he had used, he decided to head to the Hokage's office, but not before putting up the hood of his jacket. Today will be an interesting day, he thinks as he leaves his apartment and walks calmly to the Hokage Tower. After a couple of minutes of walking, he arrives at the tower door, which apparently only has a couple of Chunin guards at the entrance to the building, but is actually guarded by many members of the Anbu Corps hidden both around the building and inside it. "I've come to speak with the old man," he tells the guards. "Hokage-sama is waiting for you in the meeting room, Uzumaki-san," the guard replied respectfully, which he found strange, since normally the guards at the entrance weren't so friendly to him, but thinking about it, they weren't friendly to other people either. Upon ascending the stairs instead of taking the elevator, he notices that the walls are covered in numerous seals, likely for protection or restriction. If an enemy were to invade the village, they would be keen to obtain records of missions, spies in other villages, or jutsus. It would be devastating for the Leaf Village if any of that information fell into enemy hands. Well, from today, everything will change. Hopefully, it will be for the better, Naruto thought in front of the door of the meeting room of the Konoha leader's tower. Naruto, come in, we're waiting for you. Sarutobai's voice is heard coming from inside the room. Okay, Ajisan, wait, he said, we're waiting for you. He thinks as he enters the room, and he is greatly surprised to see that two adults are sitting around the third Hokage. You finally arrived, Naruto-kun, says a man with green eyes and dark brown hair. We were waiting for you, Naruto-san, says a man with long black hair and white eyes in a neutral tone. Who are you two? That voice of the man with green eyes sounds like the Anbu from the hospital, and the one with long hair has eyes like Hinata's. He must be a relative of hers, I questioned internally. They will be a very important part of your training this year. This is Hayashi Hyuga, he is the leader of the Hyuga clan, says the Hokage. It's a pleasure to meet you in person, Naruto-san. The pleasure is mine, Naruto said, giving a small bow as he was the leader of a clan. He is Kaido-kun, he is the Anbu who will train you during this year. He is one of my best men and I have complete confidence in him. It's a pleasure to see you without your mask, Kaido-sensei. I promise to train hard. I hope so. It will be a very tough training. There will be times when you want to quit, but luckily for you I won't let you. Well, as I promised, we'll see your parents' house, which will now be your new home. With all due respect, Hayashi-sama, what does it have to do with me living in my parents' house? I understand that my sensei needs to know more about me since we'll be spending a lot of time together this year of training, Naruto asked as subtly as possible, trying not to offend the Hyuga leader. Before the dark-haired man could utter a word to explain the reasons for his presence at what would surely be one of the great events in the blonde man's life, he was interrupted by the one known by the nickname Professor, thanks to his vast range of jutsus. I will answer your question. Hayashi-san has been your benefactor all these years. He pays the monthly rent of your apartment and maintains your parents' mansion in optimal condition. For that reason, you will find your family's premises in perfect condition, even though it has not been inhabited for more than a decade. But why? Naruto asks the Hokage and the man with white eyes. I don't know if I could say your parents and I were friends, but we were battle comrades on several occasions, and in the last war your father earned my complete trust and respect. I've never known a shinobi as strong and determined as him. He's one of the greatest ninjas of all time. When your parents died giving their lives for the good of the village during the Kyuubi's attack, I unfortunately wasn't in the village, but even if I had been, I couldn't have done much, the dark-haired man said, distraught. When I returned to the village, I learned of the fox's attack and the deaths of many shinobi, but I also learned that the fox had been sealed inside a child. I also found out what only the High Command knew, that the newborn in whom the Kyuubi was imprisoned was the son of the fourth Hokage and Kushina Uzumaki. The civilian council at that time made decisions that were solely within the ninja's purview, justifying themselves by saying, in difficult times, difficult measures are taken. The decisions they made were that you should be executed on the spot, and that all the assets of your parents' respective clans should be divided among them. But fortunately, I managed to gather some clan leaders to overturn the civil council's decision. We managed to give you an apartment, and after much fighting and arguing, I was able to take charge of safeguarding your parents' assets. Well, that explains everything, but I'm still surprised by the great hatred the whole village has for me, the heir of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans replied sadly. You're wrong, Naruto-kun. Not everyone hates you. It's just a few. Most are ignorant civilians and some shinobi who unfortunately can't or won't differentiate between jailer and prisoner, but you'll see that will change very soon, says a determined Kaido. After the short conversation, the four left the Hokage Tower with the sole intention of heading to the Namikaze Uzumaki compound. After walking for a few minutes and entering the forest, they encountered a Hyuga sentry who quickly intercepted them, thinking they might be intruders. However, that possibility was quickly dismissed when he saw his clan leader and the village leader with his Byakugan. Hayashi-sama, Hokage-sama, Kaito-san, what brings you here? Says a Hyuga wearing a Chunin vest who comes out from among the trees and then kneels before them in respect to his superiors. We've brought the clan leader here to officially settle in. Gather your team so he can introduce them, as from today onwards you will be in charge of protecting the lands that belong to Naruto-kun, and you will also take care of whatever he needs. While we go in, call your team. As Hayashi-sama commands, says the Hyuga as he calls the two members of his team through his intercom to introduce themselves to his protege and from now on his immediate boss. After their brief encounter with the sentinel, they ventured deeper into the forest. Emerging from the thick canopy of the great oak trees was a large wooden gate, divided in two and bearing the symbols of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, one on each side. It was sealed by Hayashi himself, a seal that was only opened when the mansion underwent maintenance. Upon reaching the main entrance in the walls protecting the mansion, the Hyuga clan leader performed a combination of seals, causing the gates to open instantly, allowing visitors and the rightful owner to enter. "Wow, Grandpa, you told me it was a mansion, but you didn't tell me it was so big," says the blonde boy, speechless at the sight of the large mansion where his parents once lived. It was a two-story Oriental-style mansion made mostly of wood. The front garden was very beautiful with several good-sized cherry trees. There was a stone path that led directly to the mansion's entrance. Inside the house, there were several rooms and also an onsen hot spring bath. That was the reason why the Namikaze Uzumaki compound was located outside the village, but it also had several Western-style baths. The kitchen was large with a small dining room so as not to use the main dining room unless necessary, and there was a dojo mainly for practicing sword katas and taijutsu movements. After exploring and marveling at the large house his parents had bequeathed to him, the blonde man settled down in the back garden, which was not as large as the front one but was still a good size, and apparently was used as a small vegetable garden where some vegetables had been grown. "My parents really built a nice big place here," the blue-eyed man commented to himself. Of course, after all, they planned for the clan to increase in number over the generations, which is why the size is considerable, the old Hokage stated. "Hayasha-sama, I thank you for taking care of the mansion and keeping it in optimal condition. I am very grateful, and rest assured that I will repay you every last penny you spend on my upkeep and that of my home." "You don't need to worry about that, I did it of my own free will." "Well, Naruto-kun, I imagine you'll go get your things so you can move right away," Captain Omega asked. "I think so," says the still stunned blonde man. "Okay, let's go outside so I can introduce you to the men who will be under your command." "Okay," Naruto replied before going out to meet his subordinates, whom he immediately recognized as Chunin because of their olive-green vests. "I'll introduce you to the team that will be under your command. This is Kazu Hyuga," he said, pointing to a young man in his 20s with the typical Hyuga features except for his short, spiky hair with a white streak. "He's the team leader and holds a high Chunin rank. Why don't you introduce him to your team, Kazu-kun?" Hayashi asked. "It will be a pleasure, Naruto-sama. I will introduce you to my team. This is Takeshi Hamada, showing a man of about 26 to 30 years old with a Chunin vest. Physically, he has a noticeable but not exaggerated musculature. It will be an honor to be at your service, Namikaze-sama," the man said. He is Fudo Ayanami, indicating the place where the aforementioned Fudo was located. He is a man who, unlike most people and shinobi of Konoha, had a dark complexion not naturally, but rather his skin tanned for other reasons and was 190 meters tall, being the tallest in the team. "We await your orders, Naruto-sama," the dark-haired man murmured. "I hope we can get along and become friends," Naruto said, to which the Hyuga and his team only responded by nodding with a half-smile on their faces. "Well, Naruto-kun, I have matters to attend to. I hope to see your progress soon," the third Hokage remarked before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. "I'm retiring too," says the dark-haired leader of the Hyuga clan, to head back to his mansion and also have his daily training session with his daughters. "I, on the other hand, will explain how we will begin and what our daily routine will consist of," Kaido said, not without first asking Naruto's guards to resume their patrol. "Okay, sensei, I'm listening," the blonde boy said to his new sensei. "We have exactly 14 months and I have decided to divide the training into 5 parts. The first stage will consist of 2 months which we will use to condition your body for the tough training you will be subjected to. During this stage you will train to improve your endurance and also improve your chakra control, as well as learn basic techniques and if time allows discover your element in the end, apart from the Nenten element of course. And what will be the other 4 stages of my training? The second part of your training will last 3 months just like the previous parts. This second part will consist of teaching advanced ninjutsu. We will reinforce your control of shinobi weapons, such as short and medium-range weapons like kunai or the katana, which is a short-range weapon. The third part of your training will be for learning A-level techniques and some S-level techniques. We will begin with the introduction of combat strategies, as well as espionage, pursuit, and assassination techniques. The fourth part will serve exclusively to consolidate and reinforce the knowledge and skills acquired in the previous phases. Finally, the fifth and last part will be a test to determine if you are ready to join Omega Omega. This test will consist of hunting down 3-level Nukenin defector ninja, either alive or dead. You must bring back their bodies or, if necessary, capture them before the deadline that will be set at the start of the test. And when I pass those tests, what will I do, sensei? Uzumaki asked his sensei. When will you pass them? I see you have a lot of confidence in yourself. You're sure you'll pass them. I like that. Well, I can't tell you that for now. Just be content with being informed about your training. I'll see you in a few days, the Anbu captain commented before disappearing in a puff of smoke. After his master left, Naruto set about gathering the few belongings he owned. After spending a couple of hours in his apartment, reflecting on how grateful he was to have lived there, since despite its lack of luxury, it offered him refuge from both the weather and other people. Having said goodbye to his first home, which he would never forget, he decided that with the money he earned from future missions, he would buy this apartment so he could remember and never forget his origins. Once back in his new home, he toured the rooms to decide which was the most suitable, ultimately choosing the largest room, which boasted a large window offering a beautiful view of the mansion's main entrance. And so the days he had free passed, which he dedicated to light training with Kage Bunshin Shadow Clones and Kage Shuriken Shadow Shuriken, and he also began to practice a fire-type technique called Suten Water Dragon, which to tell the truth wasn't coming out correctly, but at least he already had 2 good level techniques learned, and that was already an achievement. After the short training session, he decided to take advantage of the fact that it wasn't too late and went for a walk in the forest where his family's property was located. Immediately upon leaving the walls of the mansion, one of the guardians appeared in front of him, whom he quickly identified as the leader of the team. "Good evening, Naruto-sama." "Good evening, Kazosen. I went out for a nighttime stroll. Are you still on guard?" asked Uzumaki. "I'm the only one on guard. I sent Takeshi and Fudo to rest," the Hyuga replied. "I understand, but why don't you keep me company on my walk instead of following me from afar?" the blonde suggested, to which the Hyuga was surprised since he thought Naruto didn't realize he was following him. "How did he know I was following him?" the intrigued Chunin asked. "I didn't really realize it was just a guess, but what I still don't understand is why Ajisen and Hayashisa-sama assigned me personal guards." "Well, as the leader of a clan, you will need protection from potential enemies you already have or that you may make over time," the Chunin replied. "Since when have you been protecting this place?" Naruto asked, trying to start a conversation with his guardian. "I started." A couple of hours passed while they both talked about various topics, trying to get to know each other a little better. After all, it's good to know who you work for and who works for you. After the chat and the walk, the blonde man decided to rest and go to sleep, preparing for tomorrow since he would begin his training. Chapter 6, Repercussions. Training begins. The council members were absolutely furious about the Hokage's decision. Or rather, some of them, like Danzo Shimura, Himura Mitakado, Koharu Utenate, and the leader of the civilian council, Akin Harun. They had gone on a trade negotiation with the land of Tea, and upon their return they learned that the Hokage had decided to give the Kyuubi child everything that belonged to him. Furthermore, the identity of his parents had been revealed to him, and to top it all off, he was offered a seat on the council, which was rightfully his by blood. Moreover, he was doubly entitled to it since he belonged to 2 clans, the Namikaze and the Uzumaki. This gave the Hokage a couple more votes on the council, as it was no secret that the child was the 3rd Hokage's protege and that the Hokage was very fond of Sarutobi, which tipped the scales in his favor. "Hokage-sama, how dare you commit such an act of betrayal against the village? I would have thought it of anyone but you," Counselor Haruno spat. "What you've done is complete madness. You've given the demon the legacy of our beloved 4th Hokage, and even worse, you dared to offer him a position on the council." "Watch your words, Haruno. Remember who you're talking to," says a man in a military green vest with long pinnacle-shaped hair, immediately silencing Haruno. "Sarutobi, what explanation can you give us?" Danzo asked calmly. "After all, the work of making a scene was the fault of that odious pink-haired girl. You broke your own law. I'm sure you'll have an interesting story to tell, won't you, Sarutobi?" the root leader said mockingly. "Of course I have it," the 3rd Hokage replied calmly. "Do you think I would break my own law for no reasons?" he said as he slid a folder across the large council table to the dissenting council members, explaining in detail how things happened on the night Naruto Uzumaki's life changed completely. "This is further proof that that demon must be executed," the Haruno woman spat out after finishing reading the document. "That demon stole a valuable scroll from the village and is pardoned, and not content with that, he is given the legacy of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans." "Didn't you read the Haruno report?" the Nara clan leader questioned. "Naruto Uzumaki was the victim of a deception. He was merely a pawn used to steal the scroll of forbidden jutsus. But upon realizing Mizuki's betrayal, he confronted him and, even more incredibly, defeated him. Have you considered the boy's immense potential? He managed to defeat a Chunin without even graduating from the academy. If that isn't potential, then I don't know what your definition of potential is." He silenced the leader of the civilian council once again with his arguments. "But tell me, what's so special about you that you were put into the Omega program?" asks Koharu Utenate, Sarutobi's former teammate. "Because from what little we know about the group you formed, most, if not all, of its members have some special ability." "Well, I see you've tried to gather information from Omega, and if most of the members of Omega have some special ability, and Naruto-kun is no exception since he's the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi," the Hokage commented, brilliantly concealing the true ability that got the blonde boy into the program. Besides, I'm not the only one with a special group under my command, am I, Danzo? The third Hokage inquired. The Anbu ni organization only serves to protect the interests of the Leaf since you seem too busy protecting that kid, the bandaged man spat at the Hokage. That matter will be addressed at another time, Danzo, the Hokage said, now without much enthusiasm. After all, this wasn't the right moment to discuss such a topic, as he had already taken matters into his own hands. It was very unsettling that his main competitor and ideological counterpart had an armed and trained group at his complete disposal. The point here is that my decision is made. From this day forward, Naruto Uzumaki will be known as Naruto Namikaze. His bank accounts will be released immediately, and he may use the resources as he requires. But this has to be put to a vote. This is a democracy. Haruno insists desperately. You're mistaken, Harunasan, this is by no means a democracy. This is a military regime where, unfortunately for you, I'm at the top of the chain of command, the third Hokage stated firmly. Furthermore, all members of the civilian council will be under investigation. Their bank accounts and properties will be frozen and reviewed, and they will be subjected to interrogation by Ibukisen. Does anyone have any questions? He added more as a statement than a question. As she finished saying those words, silence reigned in the council room. The pink-haired woman was completely stunned, frozen, and the other council members, both civilian and shinobi, never expected that resolution from the Hokage. What right does Hokage-sama have to do that? Asks Councillor Akin Haruno in a doubtful voice. As the supreme leader, both military and civilian, one of my powers is to initiate an investigation into any member of the village I wish, regardless of whether they are a ninja or a civil. But you should already know that since you are a scholar of the village laws, Sarutobi replied in an extremely calm manner. After saying those words, the now strengthened third Hokage ended the meeting, sending a clear message to his opponents. The action he took at that moment unknowingly gave him a second wind in his image as an authority figure. He made it clear to his rivals that he would not be an easy tree to fell, because even though his youth had faded several decades ago, he still possessed the will of fire. The young blonde man was currently experiencing a rather difficult morning. It was barely 8:30 a.m., which meant he wasn't even halfway through his training. It began with a light muscle stretch, and after that, the torture began. The exercises started with a run around the village, which shouldn't have been too complicated for a shinobi in training. But as expected, it wasn't just a simple run. His limbs, arms, and legs were tattooed with seals weighing 5 kilos each, totaling 20 kilos of extra weight. At first, this wasn't a real nuisance, but as the minutes passed, it became increasingly bothersome, noticeably decreasing his speed and agility in jumping over the natural obstacles in his path, such as trees, buildings, etc., and to make matters worse, the run had already lasted more than 2 hours without a single break. You can stop now, Naruto-kun, said his sensei, who was no longer wearing his Anbu uniform but still had a mask covering part of his face, leaving only his eyes exposed. Tell me, what did you think of the race with the weight seals? The masked man asked the blonde boy. At first it wasn't so difficult, but as the minutes passed it became more and more tiring. There came a point where it was difficult for me to make the jumps I needed to get over the obstacles. From now on you will wear these seals day and night, and when you get used to the weight we will gradually increase it. This will help us strengthen your body, increase your speed, and enhance your endurance, says the Anbu. That way I'll train even without actually training, right, sensei? Exactly, and now we'll continue with your training. Since you've warmed up, what follows is a series of agility exercises. I'll throw kana and shuriken without points or edges at you. Be prepared, as I'll throw them as if I were throwing them at an enemy, the Anbu commented seriously. Now I want you to dodge them. I don't want you to repel them, just dodge them, okay? Kaito asked. Understood, he says as he puts himself at a distance. It was a hail of weapons being thrown at Namikaze, most of which he dodged, much to the Anbu's surprise. This demonstrated the great agility of his student and once again confirmed the negligence of many of his teachers. Something was definitely going on at the academy. According to academic reports from years prior to Uruka Naruto's arrival, he had never shown even the slightest aptitude for being a shinobi. The academy reports contained completely nonsensical information. When his training ended, he had to speak seriously with the third Hokage and request that he initiate an investigation at the academy, as it was inconceivable that the boy had been sabotaged in this way for so many years. And so the first day of training passed. After the agility exercise came other exercises such as swimming around a small lake 10 times without stopping, and of course with the integrated weights which made the task titanic. After that exercise came basic combat as well as small meditation exercises which would help to try to improve their chakra control, and after midday the practice of basic ninjutsu began. What we'll try now is to form basic jutsus. Let's start with the correct hand position, he says, showing him the proper seals to make a bunshin. Now you try it, Naruto-kun. Okay, he says while making the corresponding hand seals, but failing miserably to form two scrawny-looking clones that vanished in a puff almost instantly after creating them. It's the best I can do, says a saddened blonde man upon seeing his creations. According to what Hokage-sama told me, you are capable of performing an A-level jutsu and a B-level jutsu, says the Omega member. I want you to show them to me. Yes, sensei, shadow clone jutsu, he replies as he performs the hand seals to create 5 perfectly solid clones. Upon creation, these clones perform the other jutsu that Namikaze learned. Shadow Shuriken. The clones shout in sync as they launch a rain of shurikens towards a nearby tree, surprising the Anbu since not only did he create perfect clones, but the clones had enough chakra to perform a B-level jutsu. Tell me, Naruto-kun, what's easier for you to perform, a shadow clone or a normal clone? He asked Naruto, seeing how easily he performed 2 A and B level jutsus. To be honest, sensei, it's much easier for me to perform a shadow clone. I know it shouldn't be that way, but it's very difficult for me to mold small amounts of chakra. It's like when a river overflows. No matter how many sandbags you put in to prevent it from overflowing, in the end it overflows, he replies, embarrassed by his inability to mold small amounts of chakra. I understand perfectly what you're talking about, and that's for a simple reason: you have too much chakra. I would even dare to say that you have 4 or 5 times as much as me, and my chakra reserves are quite good, he commented, surprising his student. Wow, then I won't need to learn those boring jutsus, he murmured happily. I'll just concentrate on one good level jutsu. You're wrong, the basic jutsus of the academy are essential for a shinobi. You never know what will happen on the battlefield. A bunshin or a body replacement technique can save your life or the life of your team. For that reason, we will concentrate the rest of the day on chakra control. In this way, they proceeded with meditation and concentration exercises, which led again to the manifestation of the elemental chakra of the blonde man who was in a meditative position. This phenomenon occurred in such a way that within a radius of at least 10 meters, things began to freeze, and although the temperature dropped considerably, Namikaze did not seem to notice. In fact, he seemed to be quite comfortable with the weather. This is simply incredible. The last person to possess such an ability was the second Hokage. He was the only one who could transform his chakra into water, and not only that, he could transform it into ice by combining it with wind chakra, but this is different from what Tobirama-sama did. Naruto doesn't combine water and wind chakra, rather he creates the ice element itself. The second Hokage was a genius. He is one of the few men in ninja history who could create an element by combining others. I am absolutely certain that Naruto-kun has no idea what his elemental affinities are, and obviously he is even less capable of combining chakra. So the only explanation is a Kekkei Genkai bloodline, thought Naruto-sensei. Alright, Naruto-kun, open your eyes, the Anbu ordered. Wow, what happened? Did I do that, sensei? He says, still unable to believe what his eyes are seeing. This is my element, Hyuten ice, he murmurs in a whisper. Since the first time he used it, he wasn't entirely aware of what he was doing. If you did it, and I must confess you've surprised me, I didn't think your Kekkei Genkai bloodline would show itself so easily. Now stand up and let's see what kind of chakra you master besides Hyuten, he says as he takes a sheet of paper from his pocket to show it to him. This sheet is special because with it we can define which elemental affinities you have, he says as he extends the sheet for Naruto to take. If the sheet gets wet, your element will be water. If the sheet burns, it will be fire. If it wrinkles, it will be lightning. If it tears in two, it will be wind. And if the paper turns to dust, it will be earth, he says calmly, looking expectantly at the blonde boy. Upon taking it and concentrating chakra in the leaf, something somewhat unexpected happened to the blonde man and the Anbu as the leaf split into 3 parts. One of them got wet, the second broke, and the last one froze, thus confirming the Anbu captain's assumptions. Excellent, you have 3 elemental affinities, water, wind, and ice. This makes your training a little easier as we'll have a wider range of jutsu to choose from. That explains why I couldn't do a Katen jutsu even though I practiced it a lot, Namikaze muttered somewhat angrily, recalling his failed attempts to perform a Katen jutsu. Yes and no. The fact that you don't have fire or earth as your elemental affinity doesn't mean you can't perform jutsus of those elements. What will happen is that it will be more difficult for you to perform them, while jutsus of your elements will be much easier to do, his sensei replied. Well, now I'll show you how to really use shadow clones. Shikamaru Nara normally wouldn't bother to do anything well, he'd never bother to do anything, but this time was different. His friend, okay, maybe he wasn't his friend, or at least not to the same degree as Chaoji. And even though he didn't want to admit it, not to the same degree as Ino, or rather, his classmate Naruto Uzumaki had been absent from the academy for over a month and a half. And it seemed as if no one cared, or rather, almost no one, except for the Hyuga heiress, whom he happened to overhear asking about Uzumaki as she passed by his classroom. Aside from her, no one else noticed the blonde's absence. Logic would dictate that he had finally given up on being a ninja and obviously on his dream of becoming Hokage, but that same logic, which he sometimes cursed for being too troublesome, prompted him to investigate this sudden desertion further. The first thing he looked into was Naruto's apartment, which he had already visited a couple of times to deliver assignments on Urokai-sensei's orders, but to his surprise it was empty. Completely empty, and when he asked the neighbors in the adjacent apartments for information, they could only reluctantly tell him that a couple of chunin accompanied by Naruto had come to collect the blonde's belongings. This indicated that either he had been evicted from the building or Hokage-sama had relocated him, since it was logical that, lacking a family, the blue-eyed boy's sustenance was provided by the village leader. So the most plausible option was that he had been relocated, which, upon reflection, wasn't surprising since the apartment he was in wasn't suitable for living. But that still didn't explain his classmate's sudden defection. Despite what his logic dictated, his intuition told him there was more to it than met the eye, and it seemed his intuition hadn't failed him. Because at that moment he saw Naruto with his clothes in tatters, barely walking by sheer inertia. He noticed that his clothes, or rather what was left of them, were the kind of attire he normally wore, and not only that, he could swear that the blonde hair grew a couple of centimeters. "Hey Naruto." Nara shouted to get his companion's attention, but to his surprise, when he turned to look at him, his immediate reaction was to turn around and start running at a good speed. To tell the truth, he was faster than the one who tried in vain to follow him, and now more than ever the intrigue about Naruto grew more. "You're very troublesome, Naruto. You'll make me investigate you instead of looking at the clouds," he muttered casually, looking at the sky. Chapter 7: The Mysterious Girl with Black Eyes. Almost 3 months had passed since Naruto began his training, which meant the first stage would end in a matter of days. He had briefly thought he wouldn't make it, as the training had been nothing short of torture. Every day since he started, he had returned to his mansion exhausted and aching, but all that torture had paid off. His abilities had increased considerably, his speed, strength, and chakra control had all improved significantly. He had added several jutsu to his arsenal, from basic ones to a few A and B level jutsu. And now, more than ever, he felt proud because just a couple of days ago, he had given the so-called genius of the generation a beating. This happened on a Sunday, which he always had free, and he decided to take a walk around the village. But since he didn't want to repeat the episode he had when he found Shikamaru, he decided to put on some glasses and pull up the hood of his jacket to cover his hair. He also put on a cloth mask, like Kakashi's, that covered almost his entire face except for his eyes, which were covered by the dark glasses. He left the Namikaze Uzumaki mansion followed by Kazuhyuga, with whom he had established a good relationship by helping him practice from time to time. As they passed through the Konoha shopping district, the blonde boy, seeing the shops, didn't notice and tripped over the Uchiha boy. Flashback. "You idiot, watch where you're going," shouts a grumpy Sasuke as he stands up and looks arrogantly at the hooded figure. "I'm really sorry, I didn't realize," Naruto said calmly, now knowing that the one he bumped into was Sasuke Uchiha as he turned around to continue on his way. As he turned around, he was grabbed by the shoulder, forcing him to turn back, and the one responsible for that was the Uchiha. As he did so, Naruto noticed how Kazu was about to deliver a gentle fist strike directly to the black-haired boy, to which Naruto tilted his head in disapproval. Understanding that he would take care of the matter, Kazu simply moved a few meters away from his protege, waiting for him to resolve it. "Is there anything else you need?" Naruto asked calmly. "Apologize, you idiot, don't you know who I am?" The black-haired man asked arrogantly. "Can't you defend yourself? Is that why you brought that Hyuga trash as a babysitter?" He said, now facing Namikaze directly. "I'm from the most powerful clan in this village, you owe me respect." "I already apologized for the incident," he says calmly. "I don't owe you anything, respect is something that is earned and you would hardly earn my respect," he says as he resumes his walk, ignoring the Uchiha. "I'll finish you off, insect," Sasuke yelled as he lunged at Naruto, who had his back turned, but to the Uchiha's surprise, when his fist touched the blonde's body, he vanished in a puff of smoke. "You're really annoying," muttered Naruto angrily from behind Sasuke. Sasuke asked, turning to face the blonde before receiving a powerful vertical kick to the face that sent him flying a couple of meters into the air. As he fell heavily, before hitting the ground, the Uchiha was kicked again, this time sending him flying and crashing into a tree. "Who are you?" the raven-haired boy said before losing consciousness. "Let's go, Kazu," said Namikaze, followed by his guardian. Later, he learned that Sasuke ended up in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a reconstructed jaw. End of flashback. "Naruto-kun," Kaito said, appearing out of nowhere and perching on a tree branch. "I'm sorry for not telling you sooner, but there won't be any training today," the Anbu murmured. "Rest today. Tomorrow I'll give you a short test to see how much your skills have improved. In the meantime, I suggest you rest for the rest of the day. I'll expect you at noon tomorrow at the training grounds," his sensei said. Oh, by the way, you'll be using this for the exam, he said, handing him an Anbu-type mask, only this one was completely blank with just the eyes drawn on it. But why do I have to use this, sensei? The blonde boy asked, seeing the mask his sensei had given him. As you already know, your identity must not be revealed, and we'll have a couple of guests at your test. Besides, I don't want another scene like the one you had with the Nara boy. I already have enough to deal with trying to keep him away. He's been tracking you since the day of your meeting. That boy truly is a worthy son of Shikaku-senpai, the Anbu thought, remembering such a brilliant strategist. I'll see you tomorrow at the training grounds, arrive at noon. After giving the instructions, he disappeared in a puff of smoke, indicating that he used a clone to deliver the message. Lazy sensei, Namikaze shouted angrily. I sent a Cage Bunshin shadow clone instead of coming myself. But oh well, I'll go study the Nenten scrolls that Ajisen gave me. The last few months had been the worst for Akin Haruno. She lost her seat on the council, the one she had worked so hard to obtain through, let's say, favors. And that wasn't the worst of it. All the assets she had acquired through those same favors had been confiscated, even though she had tried to seduce Ibiki Morino into ruling in her favor before the Hawkage. Who did she think she was? She was a beautiful woman of average height with long pink hair and a good figure, unlike her daughter whose greatest virtue was her brain. Now she had to return to the modular from which she came. The woman cursed her luck ever since she married her daughter's father. The man, while not handsome, wasn't ugly either, and it wasn't as if that mattered much to her. All she cared about was mating with a shinobi so her offspring would have chakra potential and thus escape the mediocrity of a villager's life. By marrying her daughter's father, she thought all her problems would be solved, but she was wrong. The useless man never achieved anything important as a ninja. He spent most of his life as a genin, and the most ironic thing was that when he finally rose to chunin, he died on his first mission. What kind of loser had she married? And her only hope turned out to be no better than her father, a complete failure. She still remembered the words of that academy teacher. Flashback. 3 years before, a beautiful woman with jade eyes lay in a bed next to her daughter's academy instructor, who was a chunin with almost gray-white hair. Mizuki-kun, it's a deal then, right? The woman who was hugging him in bed asked sweetly. Deal, muttered a listless Mizuki, more asleep than awake. Oh, I remember now, you want me to give your daughter Sakura extra lessons. Yes, I think that's her name. Yes, Mizuki-kun, she is my daughter, Haruno replies. The more advanced she is, the better, and she will advance in rank quickly, she says while hugging her lover. It would be a waste of time. The girl is smart, but her chakra capacity is truly pathetic. Even with training, her reserves won't increase much. At best, she'll be an above-average genin, Mizuki replies, then picks up her clothes and begins to dress. But that's not possible. Something can be done, she replies, quite angry at the chunin's answer. Training medicine, something like that. It would be a complete waste of time. I'm leaving. I have things to do, Mizuki said, opening the bedroom window and jumping out onto the street, where a couple of villagers were startled by the chunin's sudden appearance. End of flashback. If someone up there really hated the older Haruno, or at least that's what she thought. In a training field in the Hidden Leaf Village, a small figure dressed in the typical Anbu attire, only entirely black, could be seen moving at great speed, dodging all kinds of projectiles, from shurikens to explosive tags, seemingly without much effort. While the mysterious figure was doing this, it was being closely observed by a pair of red eyes belonging to a beautiful woman with delicate features and striking black hair. The beautiful woman wore a dark green military vest that identified her as a jounin. You lack precision in your evasive movements and you need to improve your speed, said the beautiful Kunoichi, as the figure that moments before had been dodging attacks fell gracefully in front of her, revealing a beautiful black-haired girl of approximately 12 years old who would surely be an extremely attractive woman in a few years. To tell the truth, the girl already was attractive to her peers, but the most striking thing about the girl were her eyes, which were red with 3 black commas around the pupil. I understand, Kurenai-sensei, said the red-eyed girl, but I think I need to practice with the Sharigan deactivated, she added, now without her Jujutsu eye technique activated. And why without your Sharigan? Yuhei Kurenai asked doubtfully, since the pride of the extinct Uchiha clan was their Jujutsu. I don't want to rely entirely on my eyes. I want the Sharigan to be an extra resource. I don't want to be dependent on what my eyes can or can't do, he says, looking at his sensei, whose expression indicated he wanted her to explain further. What would happen if I faced an enemy who knows the Sharigan's abilities well? I know it's not common for someone to do that, but there must be some out there. In Konoha itself, there's a Jonin capable of facing a Sharigan user. What makes me think there aren't any in other villages? He says, staring intently at his sensei. For Kurenai, being a sensei was a new experience, as she had only recently been promoted to the title of Tokubetsu Jounin Specialist Jounin. It was a fact that she wasn't yet qualified to take on an apprentice, but at the Hokage's request she took a girl as her student. Her surprise was great when she learned that her student was an Uchiha, which was impossible because, as far as she knew, only a couple of Uchiha had survived the massacre and they were unable to activate their Jujutsu. And of course, there was the so-called genius of the generation, Sasuke Uchiha, who, from what little she knew, was arrogant like almost everyone in his extinct clan. But it seemed that Hitagi Uchiha was somewhat different from her predecessors. Although the girl retained a touch of arrogance that so characterized her family, even so, from what little she had known of her in the months she had been training her, she also realized that Hitagi had a big heart. Despite the fact that her developed Sharigan gave her a great advantage over others, the young brunette did not want to become dependent on her powerful eyes. "Sensei," the Uchiha whispered, "we have company at 12 o'clock, she said, beginning to perform hand seals, then leaping high and shouting Karyuden no Jutsu as a powerful and imposing fire dragon lunged at the apparent intruder. Daten Doryuheki Earth Barrier, a wall of earth several meters high stood in front of the fire jutsu launched by the black-haired girl, while a man in an Anbu suit stood in front of the Uchiha. "Kurenachin, your student is quite impetuous, she almost killed me," said the Anbu, turning his back on the aforementioned Jounin. "Torison, I think it was your fault since you were spying on us during our training, and I don't think a simple fire jutsu would harm a Teicho of Omega Omega," the Kunoichi replied calmly as her student stood beside her. "Besides, I think I told Teichasan not to call me so familiarly," Kurenai said to Kaido, who was wearing his standard Anbu uniform. "I'm sorry, Kurenachin," the resigned shinobi said, recalling the rejections he had suffered from the Kunoichi. But he hadn't given up until a couple of months ago when he heard the rumor that the beautiful woman was dating a Jounin who was apparently the son of the third Hokage. Only then did he give up and stop looking for her. He had known her since the academy. He had been in the same class as her for a couple of years since he graduated at the age of 8. During those 2 years, he tried in vain to approach her, but he was always rejected, perhaps never rudely, but in the end, rejection is rejection, no matter how much it was embellished. "I've come to ask you a favor, Kurenason," he said, turning to look at Kurenai. "What favor would that be?" the Jounin inquired. "I want your student to have a practice match with my pupil since a few weeks ago she gave a beating to the genius Sasuke Uchiha, and I don't want her to get cocky and think she's invincible." "I accept," Hitagi said, intervening for the first time in the conversation. "I'd like to face the boy who beat up my cousin," recalling the scandal that erupted in the village when they learned that the last Uchiha loyal to Konoha had been thrashed, "but I also want to congratulate him. Sasuke was always arrogant, and it's good that someone is showing him his place. I would do it myself, but that would mean he would discover that he's not the only Uchiha in Konoha." "That's settled, see you tomorrow at training camp 4 to 5 at noon, and don't get cocky, the kid might surprise you." On the other hand, Kurenai felt somewhat ignored since her student had given herself permission without consulting her. But it was a good opportunity to see the Uchiha in action and see what level she really had, and of course also to see Kaido's protege since she never thought that one day he would take a pupil. It would be an interesting day. Chapter 8. A Lesson in Humility. For someone like Shikamaru Nara, who planned to live a quiet and uncomplicated life, what he had been doing in recent weeks was contradictory. Since the day of his encounter with Naruto, he had dedicated himself to searching for answers and following clues, which was frustrating since for almost a month he followed false leads like a complete idiot. But upon discovering this, it was obvious that there really was something to hide, since no one would bother leaving false clues unless they had something to conceal. After that wasted month, he was now completely sure that the line of investigation he was following was the correct one, but the more answers he got, the more questions came to mind, since each and every discovery he had made led him to a new mystery, and all of this revolved around a single name: Uzumaki Naruto. The first thing he did was search the village records for the surname Uzumaki, which to his surprise was linked to Konoha since the village's founding. A man named Kenta Uzumaki had loaned 600 million ryu to the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, to help with the village's construction. The loan and the amount were exorbitant for the time, and even today it was quite large. As a symbol of friendship and gratitude, the Uzumaki clan emblem was worn on the vests of Chunin and Jounin. Upon arriving at this clue, he wondered how someone with the surname of what was likely an indirect founder of the village could be treated in such a less-than-kind manner. After this discovery, he set about researching the Uzumaki surname in ancient books and discovered that Kenta Uzumaki was the first Uzukage of the Land of Whirlpools, a small country that was apparently the first to adopt the shinobi village system. Its ninja are described in a very special way, as they were considered the strongest from that time. Checking through more recent records, he found a name with the surname Uzumaki, which according to the record said honorable daughter of the third Uzukage, a certain Kushina Uzumaki. It was all a real nuisance, but if he managed to connect the dots, the answer would be even more intriguing than the initial question. What on earth have I got myself into? That was what was going through Nara's mind, regretting a little having started such a problematic search for answers. Uzumaki Naruto. Or rather, Namikaze Naruto had spent most of his life accustomed to failure after failure, from academy training to people like some instructors who always told him he would never amount to anything. But now he was extremely proud of the achievements he had made in recent months. His skills had improved considerably, and he even managed to give Sasuke a good beating. At this moment, he felt invincible. If he had already defeated the great Sasuke Uchiha, who could defeat him now? But that thought would change in a short time, as he would receive his first real lesson, not just a shinobi lesson, but a life lesson. Another day, he arrived in the Hidden Leaf Village, and in the Namikaze Uzumaki mansion, a blonde boy with blue eyes awoke in his new, spacious room. To be honest, his new room was almost half the size of his entire apartment. He got up a little late since it was 8:00 a.m. He proceeded to have a light breakfast and, of course, the vitamins his sensei had given him, which had surprisingly helped him grow 4 centimeters in a relatively short time. He took a steam bath and dressed in his blue shirt and black jacket. The only difference in his outfit was his pants, which this time were gray with multiple pockets containing kunai and explosive tags. As it was almost time, he left his home, but not before putting on the mask his sensei had given him. Training Camp 45. 11:55 a.m. Naruto had arrived a few minutes early to be able to see the training field, which was a small clearing where there was a regular-sized lake and there was a part where there was a small but dense forest. In short, it was a good place for a battle. When he arrived, only Kaido was there. "You arrived on time, it's just a matter of time before your test arrives," says a calm Kaido. "Will my test ever arrive? What do I have to do?" The blonde man asked, intrigued. "Facing off against someone you'll have a fight, that way I'll see how much you've really progressed in these months," he says without flinching. They arrived early, says the red-eyed Jounin, who was accompanied by the Uchiha, who was dressed in a tight-fitting black suit with silver metal protections also on her arms and legs, covering her chest and back, her hair styled in a ponytail leaving only a couple of strands hanging on the sides of her forehead. "Sensei, do I have to face her?" "I didn't think it would be dangerous for her," Namikaze tells his sensei, while Hitagi stares at him inquisitively. "She's quite pretty if I look at her closely, but she's strangely familiar," Naruto thinks. "You should worry more about yourself than about me, Masketsun," Hitagi says with a hint of murderous intent. "All right, don't waste your energy arguing, prove your abilities in combat," the genjutsu specialist admonished them. "My name is Kurenai Yuhai, I am Tokubetsu Jounin Specialist Jounin, and this is my student Hitagi," she said, pointing to the kunoichi. "I hope it will be a good fight," she told them both as she and Kaido retreated to a rock formation several meters above the ground to get a better view of the battle that was about to begin. "Give it your all, guys, and Naruto, if you win, I'll treat you to a ramen night at Ikaraku," shouts Anbu Omega Omega. "Now more than ever I will win this fight." "I'm so sorry, Hitagi-san, but I haven't tasted ramen in 2 months, he declares with a big smile on his face hidden beneath his mask. "Don't worry, Masked Onsen, I'll finish you off quickly," she said, smiling in a superior manner, which again made Naruto think that the black-eyed girl was very familiar to him. The battle quickly began with an exchange of blows, and fortunately for Naruto, he seemed to have the advantage in physical strength. However, this didn't last long, as with each passing second he noticed his opponent becoming increasingly faster with her strikes. The girl even went from being on the defensive to dominating, while Namikaze found it increasingly difficult to keep up with Hitagi. "At this rate, she'll beat me senseless. I have to get away from her and attack with a jutsu," he thought, leaping back and propelling himself with chakra to jump several meters and unleash a Kinkaze no Jutsu wind sword. The blonde created a gust of wind that headed directly for the Uchiha, who simply dodged it brilliantly. "Cat and Hausenka fireball technique." The black-eyed kunoichi shouted, expelling several fireballs from her mouth that shot straight at the Uzumaki, who barely managed to escape them, though not before singeing his clothes a bit. Almost instinctively, he threw himself into the lake to submerge and immediately resurface to prepare his jutsu against Hitagi. He launched a large water dragon from the lake, hurtling dangerously towards his rival. It seemed to have struck her as her figure was swallowed up the instant the technique made contact. "I hit her, it's impossible that I missed," Naruto thought. As his technique dissipated, all he could see was a shattered rock where his opponent should have been. He was surprised to feel his rival behind him and only heard her say "Raid o Kanjikiha, inspiration wave." The Uchiha's hands crackled with electricity, and she slammed them directly into the water, electrocuting Naruto. Losing his balance, the Uzumaki sank into the lake. Hitagi quickly submerged and delivered a precise kick to the blonde's body, forcing him out of the lake with a crash, bouncing a couple of meters like dead weight. Naruto finally managed to stand, quite dazed and weak. "She tricked me," he thought. "She's really good, not just good, she's very good. There's no comparison with Sasuke, he's completely inferior to her," he thinks as he watches the dark-haired girl quickly perform hand seals. "Katen Kajiden no Jutsu Fire Blast Jutsu." A single fireball nearly 2 meters long hurtles toward the battered blonde. "This girl is seriously good. I don't have enough strength to move, I'll have to use that." Nenten Koriheki wall of molten current, thus forming a wall of ice without the need to extract water from the lake, greatly surprising the Uchiha and Kurenai who looked questioningly at her companion. But the wall of ice was destroyed by the explosion of the fireball that made upon contact with the wall, throwing the blonde backwards who got up by pure willpower. The only thing that came out of his lips was a "you have one Hitagi-san" before falling unconscious. Wow, I never thought your student could use Nenten. As far as I know, only the Uzukage possessed that Kekai Henkai, she asserted to Kaido who was beside her. The boy is certainly interesting. He's skilled, no doubt about it. He lacks combat experience, but in the future he could be someone to be feared. But you already knew how this battle would end. Why did you want to pit her against Hitagi? She's easily at the level of a high jounin right now, the intrigued Konoichi questioned. He needed a lesson in humility. I don't want to create another arrogant person. Konoha already has enough of those. I want to teach him that both inside and outside the village there are incredibly powerful people. He shouldn't get overconfident or enter a comfort zone that could lead to his destruction. The Uchiha clan is clear proof of that, isn't it, Hitagi Uchiha? My clan fell on the path of arrogance and was destroyed by that same arrogance, he says as he stands in front of his superiors. He is interesting, he says, looking at the defeated Naruto. If you'll excuse us, senpai will take our leave, he says, looking at his sensei. I look forward to seeing how much more your disciple progresses, Kurenai says as both women disappear in a puff of smoke. Naruto-kun, hey, wake up, come on, don't make me carry you, kid, she says gently with a smile. Sensei, I lost, she beat me so easily, I had no chance against her. I understand if you don't want to train me anymore, Namikaze murmured sadly. Ha 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 ha, and why would I do something like that? I knew you'd lose. I only intended to test your skills, which have improved considerably. Come on, get up, take a bath, change your clothes, and let's go to Ikaraku Ramen. You deserve it, he says cheerfully, shaking her hand. Chapter 9: The Hyuga House. Almost 11 months have passed since Naruto began his training, which could be interpreted as a great leap forward. The second part of his training was dedicated almost entirely to learning the fundamentals of ninjutsu, both theoretical and practical, all with the help of Kage Bunshin shadow clones. He also improved in fundamental areas such as weapons handling and the throwing of kunai and shuriken. Furthermore, he began studying combat techniques and strategy, in which he surprisingly proved to be very good. The third part was dedicated almost exclusively to training in elemental jutsus, lightning, fire, and nenten, and how to use them in battle, utilizing the invaluable resource of Kage Bunshin shadow clones. For each jutsu he learned, he used 50 clones to refine it. Considering that he was taught 6 jutsus of different natures weekly, he used 300 clones daily to accelerate his learning. This equated to 12 hours of daily training, multiplied by 300, resulting in 21,600 hours of weekly training. This is a stroke of luck, especially with the Kyuubi. Chakra expenditure wasn't a major problem, but the mental strain was. Every day at the end of training, when it was time to fire the Kage Bunshin shadow clones, it was mental torture as the headaches were almost unbearable. At the end of each week, he had to take a week's break, since those weekly hours were equivalent to 2.5 years of training. By the end of each week, it was almost impossible to mold chakra due to a lack of concentration caused by mental fatigue. But it was a small price to pay, since reaching his current level would have taken him at least a decade under normal circumstances, according to estimates made by Kaido-sensei. Right now, it was his last week of rest before the final great test, hunting down 3 Nuken and Rogue Ninja. He had improved a lot since his encounter with Hitagi. Now his combat experience was much greater. He had already faced his guardians on several occasions, from whom he discovered very interesting things, such as that Takeshi Hamada was a Chunin with a notable affinity for earth-based jutsus. He knew a wide range of level jutsus and some A-level ones. Facing him was quite exhausting since he possessed great physical condition and strength, but his weakness was speed, which Naruto exploited to emerge victorious in their training battles. On the other hand, there was Fudo Ayanami, a tall Chunin with a great capacity for Katen jutsus, although it was unknown if he had any other affinity. Despite his size, he was incredibly fast, but his weakness was Taijutsu, which, while not bad, wasn't good either. It was rather average. And finally, there was Kazu Hyuga, a brilliant and highly effective shinobi. His eyes were formidable even within his clan. It was only a matter of time before he was granted the promotion he deserved. Now, with the free time he had on his hands, he decided to go to the Hyuga compound and chat with Hayashi Dono, a practice that had become recurrent for him a couple of months ago. They were brief but very productive chats about the politics that governed the current shinobi world, but on the way he ran into his former partner with pearly eyes. She was in a tree crying. "Why is Hyuga-san crying?" says the blonde hooded figure in his usual disguise to conceal his identity. "None Namike-sama." The pearlied girl asked, remembering the boy her father often spoke to. Flashback. It was already night in the Hyuga compound, and their heiress arrived at the main family mansion. She had spent the entire afternoon and part of the night after the academy training so that one day she could meet her father's expectations, since it was becoming more and more evident how useless she was. She wasn't stupid and knew what the elders of the main family were murmuring. She is not worthy of being the clan's heiress. She is too weak. She is a disgrace to the clan. But despite all the training, she was still inferior to her cousin Nejinisan or Hanabincha. And her only source of inspiration had disappeared. I arrived at the main house and, as protocol dictated, went to report to my father. Upon arriving, I saw him accompanied by a young man in a black jacket with a hat that covered his head but still allowed some blonde strands to escape. The young man wore dark glasses that did not reveal the color of his eyes, and he also wore a mask like Kakashi's that covered almost half of his face up to his eyes. "Adao-sama," Hinata said, bowing deeply to her father as there was no other way. After all, he was the leader of the clan and also giving a slight bow to her father's guest. "Hinata, I'll introduce you to a family friend," he says as he turns to look at his blonde companion. He's Namikaze, while the person in question just nods approvingly. "Namikaze," she said, thinking aloud. After all, that was the surname of Konoha's greatest hero and one of the most powerful shinobi in history, and if the young man accompanying her father had the same surname, it was certain he was somehow related to such a great man. "Namikaze-sama, are you related to the fourth Hokage?" The Hyuga woman asked hesitantly. Seeing her father's eyes, she knew she had made a mistake asking such a question to a guest. "Hinata, how dare you question a clan guest?" she said, raising her voice but not shouting. "I thought I had raised you better than that," she argued angrily. "Namikaze, please forgive my insolent daughter. I assure you this will not happen again," she said, looking at the blonde man in question. "There's no offense to apologize for, Hayashidono," the Uzumaki interjected for the first time, but with a strange voice, which was surely a voice distortion Jutsu often used to hide the true timbre of his voice. "And answering your question, Hinata-san, yes, I am related to Minato Namikaze. He is my father," he said as if that were nothing. "Namikaze's existence has been kept a great secret. Minato-sama had many enemies. If anyone had known he had a son, they would have sent a horde of ninjas after him," he says, looking at his daughter with an angry expression on his face. "That's right, and besides, I'm still training. I wasn't very strong before, and even now I still have a long way to go. If my father's enemies had known about me, I probably wouldn't have even lived a year," the blonde Namikaze muttered. "We expect that in the short or long term he will be officially recognized before the clan council. Sendai-sama is already aware. It's just a matter of time before his incorporation into the council is made public," the elder Hyuga said, explaining what were surely his heir's doubts. "If you don't mind, Hinata, Namikaze and I have a matter to discuss. You may leave, and we will discuss your punishment for your insolence towards Namikaze later." "Hayado-sama," he says, discreetly withdrawing, without thinking that his father's guest is none other than his role model, Uzumaki Naruto. Fin flashback. "Why is Hyuga-san crying?" the hooded figure asked Hinata. "And no, it's nothing, Namikaze-sama," she says listlessly, wiping away her tears. "Please, Hyuga-san, share your feelings with me. Although it may not seem like it, I'm a good listener. Maybe I can't alleviate your pain, but at least I can help you vent," Naruto said. "I know what I'm talking about. And I am a disgrace to my family. No matter what I do or how much I practice, I am simply weak. I am ashamed to Adao-sama," he says between gasps. "Did he tell you?" asks Namikaze, who in the short time he had known Hayashidono did not find him to be a cruel man, rather he was very strict but also fair. "Father has never told me, but I see in his eyes the disappointment I am not only to him but to the entire clan," he says, looking at the ground. "You and I are the same. I used to seem very confident, but inside I felt like a failure, but that changed one day. Someone believed in me and gave me the opportunity to change, and I decided to take it. Hasn't been easy since I took the path my sensei taught me, to be honest. Sometimes I wanted to give up, but my sensei never let me back down," the boy said to Hinata, who was now looking at him directly, no longer looking at the ground, seemingly surprised that someone like the son of the fourth Hokage was similar to her. "But you Namikaze-sama are very strong. Kazu Oniasan told me that he has faced you and lost. You are very strong," the pearlied girl said. "There's no need to pity me." "Stop doing that," Namikaze shouts. "What did Namikaze-sama talk about?" Hinata asked, quite frightened by the sudden change in mood of the boy with glasses. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself. I know life is hard. I know there are times when you don't want to get out of bed because you don't see the point in continuing with a life that is so unfair. I know what it's like to feel the way you feel now, but I also know that can change. Get up, work hard, have faith in yourself, even if no one believes in you. Show them that you are strong. Stop feeling sorry for yourself, stop worrying, and start taking action," Namikaze said with great determination. "But how can I do it if no one trusts me?" he finally says, bursting out and letting out some of the emotions he had been repressing. "I'm a disgrace to my clan. Father thinks I'm worthless. My sister hates me because she's more skilled than me, but she'll still be marked with the caged bird seal. My cousin Neji blames me for his father's death. Tell me, Namikaze-sama, how can I go on if no one believes in you?" He says, still shouting, which is very strange since this Hinata who was with him right now was very different from the girl he had bumped into months ago. I will trust you, I will believe in you even if no one else does, he says, before leaving and continuing on his way without noticing the Hyuga girl's slight blush.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.